Welcome to the Beau Show. Today's show is not a fun one. It concerns a murder in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis is sadly a city of many murders and crimes, so that's nothing new. But this particular case made national news. It concerns 34-year-old Eliza Fletcher, a teacher at St. Mary's School in Memphis. I happen to know St. Mary's very well because it was one of the sister schools of my own preparatory school, Memphis University School. And I actually took a girl from St. Mary's to my own prom. Fletcher is also an alumna of another one of our sister schools, the Hutchison School, where I acted in several plays. So this story hits close to home in the most literal sense. In addition, her church home was Second Presbyterian Church, the very church attached to my elementary school, and the church where my graduation was held. When I first heard about the disappearance of Eliza Fletcher after she was jogging near the University of Memphis on Friday, September 2nd, around 4:30 a.m., I didn't have an optimistic outlook. She was stalked by suspect Cleotha Abston near the University of Memphis campus, who struggled with her and shoved her into his GMC Terrain and drove off. Just a few hours later, he was seen vigorously cleaning this SUV with carpet cleaner for over an hour near his brother's home. With all the surveillance and perhaps some tips, the Memphis police and the FBI were able to apprehend Abston and take him into custody for the kidnapping. In the SUV struggle, Abston left behind his sandals, which had his DNA on them. Fletcher's body had not been found at that point, but earlier this week, 4 days from her abduction, her body was found outside of a South Memphis abandoned home. Her Lululemon jogging shorts deposited not far away. Now, the cause of death has not been determined just yet, but it seems that however she died, it was likely in a struggle with this suspect, Cleotha Abston, and mere hours after the kidnapping happened on that Friday morning. Police have positively identified the body as Eliza Fletcher's, giving horrific closure to her family's worst nightmare. On its surface, the case seems to be pretty clear. This was a premeditated kidnapping and murder, but we don't have a motive. What we do know is that Cleotha Abston has done this before. Abston is a repeat offender with juvenile convictions that include rape and aggravated assault. According to court documents, at 16, he was charged as an adult in another kidnapping case in which he later pleaded guilty to abducting prominent Memphis lawyer Kemper Durand at gunpoint and driving him around to multiple ATMs to withdraw cash. He served 20 years of that sentence and was released in 2020. Abston was previously charged with especially aggravated kidnapping and tampering with fabricating evidence. He is now charged with first-degree murder, premeditated murder, and murder in perpetration of kidnapping. Late Sunday, officials added 3 more charges against him: identity theft, theft of property of $1,000 or less, and illegal possession of a credit or debit card of $1,000 or less, records show. Initially, a judge gave Abston a $510,000 bond, which he could not afford, but the judge later revoked that bond. Deputy Attorney General Steve Mulroy said Tuesday investigators had no reason to think that this was anything other than an isolated attack by a stranger. He did not divulge a possible motive. Investigators said that they have not gotten very much information from Cleotha Abston. The DA's office opposed Abston's parole in 2018, but sadly, he was released. Had he served his full term, perhaps this tragedy could have been avoided. However, because it had been 20 years since his aggravated kidnapping when he was 16, it seems he did not mature or pay his penance. Clearly, Abston was a lifelong criminal. He was not interested in being a part of daily civil life. During his previous abduction of attorney Durand, the victim described how Abston's accomplice at that time begged Abston to let Durand out of the trunk and go free. But clearly, Abston had his mind made up. Abston would be charged with aggravated robbery and especially aggravated kidnapping and be sentenced to 24 years in prison. In 2003, he filed a petition for post-conviction relief, which was denied. And Kemper Durand had written an impact statement depicting his personal feelings of being the victim of the kidnapping. He wrote, quote, "My feelings about being the victim of this crime and the feelings of those around me are that I was extremely lucky that I was able to escape from the custody of Cleotha Abston. I had been taken from the trunk of my car, where he and his co-defendant had placed me for a number of hours, and made to drive to the MAPCO station. The purpose was that I was to use my ATM card to get cash for Cleotha Abston. It was very fortunate that an armed, uniformed Memphis Housing Authority guard happened to come into the MAPCO station while Cleotha Abston, Marquette Cobbins, the second defendant, and I were using the ATM machine. It is quite likely that I would have been killed had I not escaped," unquote. Also in his impact statement, Durand wrote that it took over a year for Abston to sign the guilty plea, citing the refusal as, quote, jailhouse braggadocio. According to the Memphis paper, The Commercial Appeal, Durand also detailed Abston's lengthy history in the juvenile court system prior to his conviction for the kidnapping. The earliest of which, Durand said, dated back to 1995 when he was no older than 12 years old. Abston also appeared in juvenile court records in 96, 97, 98, and 99 for charges including theft, aggravated assault with a weapon, and rape, according to Durand's statement. Durand died in 2013, 7 years before Abston would be released, but I bet if he were alive, he would be mortified that his prior abductor had struck again, this time killing his victim. I think it's telling that Durand made such a powerful impact statement regarding Abston. Kemper Durand was very lucky. Abduction victims rarely live to tell their stories, and tragically, Eliza Fletcher did not live to tell hers. But this begs so many questions about our criminal justice system and the rehabilitation of criminals. You could make the argument that being in and out of juvie in Memphis, that Cleotha Abston was a typical misfit, perhaps parentless or without a role model, as many young kids in Memphis are. Prosecutors may take his age into account so as not to derail their entire lives. But it seems to me that Cleotha Abston was someone who never wanted to abide by any law. His constant juvenile rap sheet mentions aggravated assault and rape. This man had no respect for his fellow man or woman. You will hear lawmakers say that our prison system is just a profitable enterprise that preys upon men of color, that there is institutional racism involved. Representatives in Congress such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have advocated for the shutdown of all private prisons altogether, thereby releasing anyone incarcerated. But let's think about Cleotha Abston. Is this a guy you want out on the streets? I want to tell you about Memphis, and specifically about South Memphis. Many of you who have watched my show know that I was in a very, very serious car accident in Memphis in 2020, in which a female struck the truck that I was riding in head on, right near South Memphis. The driver was a 37-year-old female who had toxic levels of 4 illegal drugs in her system, causing her to lose control of the car and strike ours. My father was driving, and both he and the driver who struck us perished instantly as a result. I was in critical condition, but miraculously I survived to live and tell you this story. But here's what's more. That driver was a mother of 10 children. She had a suspended driver's license and no car insurance. So here is yet another person in Memphis who took my father's life and her own life without any value or respect for human life, including the 10 kids she left behind. She chose to take those drugs. She chose to operate a vehicle. She chose to let insurance lapse and to get in the car when her driver's license was suspended due to a prior infraction. That, my friends, is a devaluation of human life. These are the life decisions people make. So when I review Cleotha Abston's case file, even the fact that he worked for a cleaning service in which he stole debit cards from customers for whom he cleaned, I think of someone that has no interest in civil life. Abston's brother Mario is also in jail for drug charges. Perhaps the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. Memphis is a city that I know fairly well, and it is riddled with drug and gang activity. At one time, it was in the top 5 in assault, rape, and grand theft auto. Carjackings happen all the time there. You can barely go to a gas station to fill up without worrying about who might be stalking you. The song is supposed to be walking in Memphis, not stalking in Memphis. But what I see is a devaluation and disrespect for human life on a grand scale.